I have thought for quite some time about pleading the blood, and 2 or 3 weeks ago there was several mentions of pleading the blood, and I thought, well, let me see if I can get these thoughts all together, and so I said, I've not found. I looked in my Strong's Concordance, and I haven't found the term plead the blood or pleading the blood in the Bible, but I do believe it's a biblical principle. There was a preacher that told my mother one time, you can plead the blood for anything. And that got me to thinking about pleading the blood. Now, I'll give you 2 or 3 scriptures here. They don't really, but they kind of, the more I think about it, the more I think of like intercession. And it's a thing of interceding. I'll give you the first one in Jeremiah, if you just want to write them down. Jeremiah 49:19. Behold, he shall come up, and I really didn't look to see who he is, but he shall come up like a lion from the swelling of Jordan against the habitation of the strong. But I will suddenly make him run away from her. And who is a chosen man that I may appoint over her? For who is like me, and who will appoint me the time? And then here's the one, and who is the shepherd that will stand before me? That's the thought that I would get from that. And then Jeremiah 50:44, it's almost exactly the same wording. It may even be, behold, he shall come up like a lion from the swelling of Jordan unto the habitation of the strong, but I will make them suddenly run away from her. And who is a chosen man that I may appoint over her? Or who is like me, and who will appoint me the time? And who is that shepherd that will stand before me? Probably the closest one that I come up with was Ezekiel 22 and verse 30. And I sought for a man among them that should make up the hedge and stand in the gap before me for the land, that I should not destroy it, but I found none. And that's what we need, men and people to stand in the gap for the various things. And pleading the blood is one way to stand in the gap. And maybe I'll find a verse sometime that'll fit and better and be. But I was thinking about pleading the blood. The preacher told Mother that plead the blood for anything. Well, I think you can plead the blood to acquire, or for, like that was there, to acquire strength. Sometimes we need strength to testify. You know, we have, I recall a young lady, most people would have called her retarded, and maybe she was a little slow. And people had probably put her down to the point that she didn't think she was as smart as she really was. But I remember the night in the little church down there in Ashland, she said, I love Jesus. I think she was sitting in the pew when she said she stood up and said love, and by the time she said Jesus, she was back in the pew again. I love Jesus. Well, the next time, I think she said the same thing, but she stood all the way up before she said I love Jesus and sat back down. And then I think she added a few more words. She gained some strength. A lot of times when you do this, when you do something, it'll give you more strength. But we can we can plead the blood for strength to testify even outside the 4 walls. There's a lot of times it's a little bit hard for us to do that. To acquire wisdom, wisdom of how to minister to the sinners. You know, a lot of times. I'm sure you've heard it. We don't really go up to somebody and say, hey, you know, you're a sinner, you're going to go to hell if you don't change your ways. Well, there's a lot of people who do it that way. And I would say, and if you was really led of the Lord to do it, it might work. But most of the time it won't. Most of the time it won't. And even wisdom to minister to new Christians. It's almost the same attitude with new Christians. The devil sometimes is giving them enough problems as it is, but we need to even plead the blood for them and for wisdom, for protection. to plead the blood for protection for ourselves. First of all, from the elements. You know, sometimes we're walking, and I think one time Mother and I had been down to Sandy Hook, Kentucky, and we come back. I said, let's just drive this other direction home, and because I knew the route and how it would go into, it would connect with 23. We'd gone down 64 and went south, and then if we come this other way, come back into the town. Okay, Mother said, but on our way home, just as we come around Yatesville, we run into a thunderstorm, and there was trees around us. And it's tall trees. And so we had, I don't know whether the Mother pleaded for protection from the elements, but sometimes we need that. And elements and ailments. We plead the blood against sickness a lot of times. I remember a lady by the name of Genevieve Vincent. She would be way up in her hundreds if she was still living. She lived to be 102 or 103 as it was. And she testified one time. She said, I don't think I can testify to divine healing, but I can testify to divine health. She was 90-some years old, and she hadn't been that sick in her entire life. I mean, you know, so we can plead the blood against for protection of and accidents. See, that's one thing we're praying for the Bennett's as they're going home. We're praying for protection that the thing won't fall out of the air, you know, or crash on its landing or something like that. We pray for against those accidents. I'm messing up some of my things here, but to acquire for others, protection for others. I think right now we probably ought to pray a lot for our law enforcement. There's a lot of times that they're called out. See, I've called them twice, a couple in the last month, because I had something that was left on my property that wasn't mine. And I said, and I had to call him. I probably could have called him earlier in the daytime, but somebody stopped at 3 o'clock outside my house as if they was looking for the thing that maybe they left there, I don't know. But then I had to call him. Well, it wasn't the police I called just last night, but they're called out for things, just innocuous things. Then they go right into an ambush. And for protection for our military, and for those who live alone and are traveling, for protection, to acquire protection there. Secondly, we can probably plead the blood against temptation. That we'll be, the Bible, it's in the Lord's Prayer, lead us not into temptation. So we can pray, plead the blood against temptation and against opposition from gossip and rumors and misinformation about ourselves. I guess in a sense that's what I'm doing lately, because I think somebody had taken my name back in the 80s, used my name and did some things, and they think it's me. But I can't prove that, but I believe that. And against the devil and his demons. We can plead the blood against these things. And I think it's Isaiah 58 was talking about, the whole chapter I think is about fasting. And we can, pleading the blood and fasting together is good. In that chapter, this thought just came to me, so I don't, but to loose the bands of wickedness is the word that is used in that particular passage. We can't pray the prayer of salvation for another individual. They have to do the repenting. They have to do that kind of prayer themselves. But there are people who are so bound by sin that they can't get there themselves. We can pray that those bands will be loosened, that they'll be free to pray. That we can free them so that they can pray. The demons and the devil there has got them so bound. We can plead the blood that direction. We can plead the blood about uncertainties. I'm sure everybody here understands and you know everything's certain in your life. Everything's certain. No, there's all kinds of uncertainties. There's uncertainties you don't even know about. Because you're expecting, each of us is expecting to go home tonight. But I think so, I don't know, maybe been a couple of years ago, or, since I'm my age, it might have been 10 years ago. But there was some people coming to church, and they couldn't get across the bridge because there was somebody, they was thinking he was going to jump off the bridge. They blocked the bridge off. They was trying to talk to him. Jerry wanted to come to Sunday school. He was planning on coming. It's one of the homecomings we had some years ago. And he's going down the road, and there was a power line on the. Well, he wasn't expecting that. Uncertainties. But the uncertainties, there are uncertainties we don't know. We don't understand a thing about what's going on, but we can plead the blood, and God knows all about it. We can plead the blood about unsaved. And I made mention of it a minute ago, but this to bring conviction on these people. We can plead the blood for the unsaved. And for church ministries, about church ministries, especially missionaries on the field. And this may go back to the protection for them. Many of the missionaries are in harm's way. And we pray for those. A lot of places are hostile to Christianity. I do have, there's an illustration comes to my mind. There was a missionary in a new area. And some of them didn't like the white man being there. They didn't like that going on. And so they heard the war drums beating. And all of a sudden, they quit. And in a few days, this tribe began to come in and listen to him preach. And they said, wasn't you going to burn the place down a few weeks ago? Well, yeah. I mean, I'm saying it all in my way and not in their language, of course. Well, why didn't you? Well, when we came, the house was surrounded by men and glowing. They glowed. We wasn't going to come near to that. Somebody was praying for those missionaries, pleading the blood for protection of those missionaries. And we can. And my last thought in the body of this is to plead the blood until the situation changes. There's another way of that. There's an acronym: push, pray until something happens. Plead the blood until the situation changes. And plead the blood whenever you need to, as often as you need to, until he comes.